main thing that got me into cinema and film and video is that I had this recurring dream similar to that where I would go to a graveyard, I'd fall asleep by a grave, and then I'd be in the redwood forest, which is where we grew up. And I felt so alive in that dream, and then I would wake, and when I would wake up, I'd feel like I was living in that cemetery. I was struggling with depression. And when I made that video, however much it needs editing and it's kind of tedious to watch now, it was incredibly powerful. So that's what drew me in, and that brought me into studying dreams and surrealism and going to Prague and studying with Jan Schwankmeyer, and from there getting into British surrealism, and then getting into magical realism, and just becoming a lucid dreamer and all that. It goes hand in hand with cinema, dreams and cinema. I mean, I think that's why so many people get into it. It can capture the dream state.
But a lot of those films, there's a lot of similar aspects. We talk about a lot of space, talk about inner, outer space, and they kind of go with each other. They're all connected. There's a lot of dynamics. I mean, the constant flow of things which connects everything together. And I've been just wondering if you've been always into that, you've been inspired. What is the main? There's of course this also aspect of faith, and could you develop on that?
Yeah, it's evolved over time. I believe in creative evolution. I'm really into Bergson and a lot of other philosophers and scientists, but it started from the beginning very quickly. It came from dreams, and I understand my dreams. And then I was into German Expressionism and Romantic era, goth, neo-goth literature and films and anything. I was a funeral director pretty early on, because I wanted to be an osteologist. But after I started working in a funeral home, I grew the distaste for anything involving that, and I got more into my films. And then I was discovering a lot of Russian animation, Starvich, and then Lottie Reiniger and George Pawel, a lot of Eastern European cinema, which led to Schwankmeyer, and a few others. So from there, I was like, I'm going to give animation a try, because even in the Dreamer film, I was starting to do a little pixelation, so I've always been interested in that. So animation to me was a gateway to exploring a lot of obsessions in my mind, a lot of recurring themes and fears that I see are knitted throughout all the films. And as time has gone on, now after Cal Arts, I got just almost brainwashed with experimental film, which I was willing to do, but I studied with some key people like William Moritz, who would have these 8-hour film classes. We just watch experimental films 6 to 8 hours. And Jules Engel started the experimental animation group. He was alive. I was there my first year. He was alive, and then he died at the end of the year. I remember that, and he was my mentor. And he really gave me encouragement to pursue it, because still, but especially then, there's a lot of insecurity, And then today, it's just a lot of independently merging my fine art practice with my holography and sculpture and drawing, which I've always done prior to film, and doing series and then having films go along with various series of work. I'm kind of pulling away now. If you saw some of the early work, it got kind of psychedelic after a while, and that came from a lot of different experiences and a lot of travel to very powerful places around the world. And now I'm more kind of in exploring minimalism and abstraction. So yeah, it's just been this big arc. Working with Jeffrey has been pretty key to keep going, because a lot of times I'll just exhaust my ideas on a film, and then I'll be like, here, can you bring he's very sensitive. So it's like, what do you feel about this? And it seems like we can sync up very well and have this kind of univision. So that still inspires me, listening to Jeffrey's music.
I actually don't think I'm that good at putting music to film because every time I try to do it, it's all wrong. So we have like these spiritual connection between us where I create a body of music for any project, and knowing that it's gonna marry to it in some way, and there's no way I can again construct that in a way where I see a scene or an image, or a lot of it's so poetic that I feel like a lot of things could work, but if I try to direct it too much on my own, it seems too contrived, and I'm not really into like film scoring, like looking at an image and putting strings to it or something. That's not interesting to me at all. What's more interesting is that his ideas are an inspiration to dive into the world of the film, so that I take more away from it than just music to a film. It's part of my inner development. So throughout high school, I would just once I realized I had any sort of musical calling or gift, which was a little later, 12 or 13, and I realized I couldn't take lessons because I would just memorize it first, because I had like a near perfect pitch, but I'm not, I couldn't take lessons. I couldn't, so I would lock myself in my room and play music and compose all day, and Eric would come, and he would, at night, and he would just come in and listen to it, and that was basically like part of junior high school, and then Eric went off to Cal Arts, and it was a little bit harder to be separate from each other in our working relationship, and I had a lot of crazy things happen to me too, I won't go into, but one of the reasons why I didn't do the music to Prelude was I was detained in another country. Crazy story, but it was, but coming from that experience was amazing, because after I had that crazy experience, I wrote a lot of poetry, and I came back, and after Prelude, Eric did Prelude while I was down there, and then I came back, and so it's kind of been the same working relationship as usual. Hopefully we grow, and I see a lot of symbolism and musically as well, repeating. But hopefully when you come around and you're doing something, you're more on a matrix where you're seeing where you were before than circular repeating yourself. I think it's okay to return to themes and things that have inspired you, as long as you're on the ascending matrix. Not necessarily that the music's better, but that you've grown and you've taken something with it.
Thank you, guys. From the technical aspect of the film, I mean, there's so much. Yeah, that's where I always I've done film studies and experimental film. Yeah, I've never gone that far. I mean, that's like totally different level. Or even stop motion, where you have pretty much the stop motion doesn't look anymore like stop motion. There's like pretty much very constant, well connected movement. But from like today, what do you guys usually work like when it comes to film? You still use Bolex, or you use digital or film, or?
Well, you can see there's a lot of film in there, and there's times where I went back to digital still or video, but now, as of right now, I'm going back to film again. It's just, no matter the resolution, it's the same argument everyone says, like, there's literal magic there. It's like, from scientific point of view, there's capturing light, it has depths, and especially for stop motion animation, you're making a lot of sets, you want that depth to be like tactile and palpable, and sometimes with even like 5K or whatever, just so flat. But as far as like technically, I see like it's technically getting better over time, but then there are some things in the early work that's strong that's been lost in the recent work. I think that's the same for a lot of artists. There's just something when you're really naive and raw, just starting out, that there's just something that's there, that's really strong. That when you become more cognizant and aware of, technical things, you lose. So that's something that's interesting. But the work that I plan to do technically is increasing in complexity, and I guess even, I've been working on this feature recently. You can probably see a gap, but I actually stopped doing animation because I felt like I reached a point that I was starting to do the same thing and I needed to push myself farther. So now I'm doing something that I hope I can survive. But I've seen little tests and it just would be, you know, kind of like magic on the screen if I'm able to pull it off. So yeah, what do you think about music and technology and all that?
I mean, I've thankfully been able to finally work with a large-scale orchestra for a symphony I wrote. I haven't yet done a film score on that scale, but it was a really great experience to sort of. On the Beyond the Forest, I was performing the Armenian flute instrument and the duduk, and I was also performing on the ocarina, and there's no way to get that sort of sound with digital samples. Although I love digital because, it was 2001 when I got my first iMac and started recording digital music. But actually, before there's a thing called mini disc that was in between tape and CD. It didn't really catch, but the sales guy got me on it. So it's like this format's dead now. They're like floppy disk things. So before computers, I was working already in that analog to digital format with synthesizers. So I embrace what you can do experimentally with digital technology. There's no way I could. On the other hand, there's no way I could create the sound design and the sort of the inner outer landscapes with analog techniques. But now I'm really fortunate that on this latest teaser, I sort of just threw together last minute. I was able to work with a medium scale orchestra for some of that. So.
And you mentioned the future and the upcoming plans. I don't know if you could. I don't know how far you can develop that, but it's upcoming. It's done, and it's about to be released. Or
I'm making a little teaser myself, little animation, but basically in this new one, I animated a lot from the Book of Revelation, so it's pretty intense imagery, and then. I wrote this feature based on my experience in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and then also responding to, the current state of the country and the police state, and a lot of paranoid. I'd say it's a very paranoid film, very beautiful, but paranoid film. It's done right now, but it's like a wine. You have to let it age and take some time away from it. That's kind of where we're at right now. I hope it'll be released next year. Just not sure which festival will pick it up and then how much it'll change before it actually premieres.
Maybe it varies from film to film, but I was curious how much you plan ahead of time. Do you have a very detailed idea of how it's going to turn out, both visually, musically, also from the meaning? Do you have a specific meaning or theme you're working with, or does a lot of it end up being kind of open-ended, and as you're working on it, things change and develop?
Yeah, usually, I'd say the first 5 years I just made it. It was in my head, and I was just trying to put it down. But now I do pretty detailed storyboard, write scripts for the features, obviously. For the shorts, I'll do tests, storyboards, everything people do, choose the color palette. It's becoming more traditional in that way now, just because time is more precious than before. Being married, having a baby, and all these other things I'm trying to do. So I do try to plan it out, but when I actually get out with the camera and the puppets outside, and I'm doing this life-size stop-motion stuff outside now, it kind of goes out the window because I'm inspired in the moment, and its ideas are coming into my head. So yeah, I kind of loosely follow a guideline, and I certainly make a lot of lists of things I want to accomplish, but they don't always manifest entirely.
I was curious how you approached your use of, direct religious symbols. Has that changed over time, or maybe do you have a kernel of your general approach?
I'd say, to make it short, my arc would be that I responded to God through nature, which you could say, I mean, that's kind of pagan, but I really saw God that way and felt His Spirit that way, and now I grew up in like a Western Protestant family, and recently I've been going to an Eastern Orthodox church, and I like Orthodoxy, not Russian Orthodoxy, like, pussy, right? All that. I'm talking about the kind of the independent Orthodox Church of America, and it's all about mystically, feeling God like working, because like God is mysterious and it can't be pinned down, and that our life is about growing spiritually rather than like other things, and you're supposed to just be humble and use your gifts given to you, your abilities, and allow them to grow as much as possible, and let your life, rather than your words, help people, not even like win them over, but help them grow spiritually as well, and develop your soul and do things that are good for your soul. So yeah, the imagery is becoming less blatant, but I definitely stand by the work before. Like, like Albino Fawn Productions is inspired by the Saint Eustace story, and that's like this guy who was killing Christians in Rome in the first century, and then he saw, a stag and then a crucifix, and then Jesus was talking to him, and he stopped killing people, and he was killed by people. So that's a mystical Christian thing. I think that really happened, and I've seen some amazing things happen myself. Definitely a miracle believer. But yeah, just moving away from judgment and like knowing 100% about everything, and just more of like understanding that God loves you and you're on a growth journey rather than like you've arrived. Like nobody ever arrives. We just continue to grow. So yeah, I think that's coming through in the work, and I'm happy about that. So thank you for coming.
Guys, thank you for coming.
Thank you.